What if I told you the average American farts 14 to 22 times a day? Now sure, farting is normal, everyone does it. But here's the catch. Studies show that Americans fart significantly more than most people around the world. More than Europeans, more than Asians, even more than the famously bean-heavy diets of Latin America. And no, this isn't just some immature bathroom humor. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar diet industry, corporate cover-ups, government research, and food supply chains, all linked to one uncomfortable truth. Americans are, quite literally, the gassiest nation on Earth. Think about it. Why is it that every joke, every meme, every stereotype about farting somehow traces back to the US? Why is the whoopee cushion a classic American invention? Why is Taco Bell, a restaurant infamous for digestive destruction, not just tolerated but celebrated? It almost feels like farting isn't just an accident in America, it's a feature, a side effect of something bigger. Because once you start digging, you find connections between processed foods, corn subsidies, gut microbiomes, and even Cold War science experiments that suggest America's gas problem isn't just about what people eat. It's about how an entire system was designed. And here's the kicker. The people profiting off it don't want you to know. So tonight, we're not just asking why Americans fart so much. We're asking, did the US government accidentally engineer the gassiest population in history? Are corporations using our own digestive systems against us for profit? And is there a reason why this problem is getting worse every single year? Grab your nose plugs and a can of Febreze, because once you hear the truth, you'll never laugh at a fart joke the same way again. Because the real story behind America's gas stinks. So, where does all this gas come from? Well, to answer that, we have to start with America's #1 crop. And it's not wheat, it's not soy, it's corn. So, where does all this gas actually come from? The simple answer, your gut bacteria. Every fart is basically the aftermath of trillions of microbes inside you having a microscopic rave. They feast on whatever food you just ate, break it down, and in the process release gases like nitrogen, hydrogen, methane, and carbon dioxide. But here's the twist. Not all diets produce the same amount of gas. And America's diet? It's basically a gas factory. Let's talk about corn. Corn isn't just a vegetable in the US. It's the foundation of the entire food system. Thanks to decades of government subsidies, corn has been turned into everything. High fructose corn syrup in sodas, cornstarch in processed foods, corn oil in snacks, and even the feed that fattens up America's beef, pork, and chicken. If you're eating in America, you're eating corn, whether you know it or not. And here's the kicker. Corn ferments like crazy inside your gut. Your bacteria break it down, and boom, hydrogen and methane levels spike. It's the digestive equivalent of setting off fireworks. Now compare this to, say, Japan. Their traditional diet is heavy on rice, fish, and vegetables, low-ferment foods. Or Mediterranean diets in Europe, with olive oil, fresh produce, and lean meats. Less fermentation, less gas, less farting. But in America, every cheeseburger, every chicken nugget, every healthy protein bar is basically corn wearing a disguise. And the result is one of the most bloated, gassy populations in the world. And here's where things get really suspicious. Corn subsidies weren't created because Americans love fart jokes. They were created during the Nixon administration in the 1970s, when Secretary of Agriculture Earl Butz pushed for get big or get out farming policies. Farmers were told to grow corn, and the government guaranteed they'd get paid. The result? A tidal wave of cheap corn, which corporations turned into processed foods, sweeteners, and animal feed. Which means, whether intentionally or not, the US government engineered a diet that doesn't just make people overweight and diabetic, it makes them fart more. And the corporations? They're laughing all the way to the bank, because every soda, every Dorito, every McNugget is another ticket to digestive chaos. So, was it all just an accident of agricultural policy? Or was there a bigger agenda behind reshaping America's gut and its gas? Because if you think corn explains everything, think again. The real gas bombshell? It wasn't just grown in the fields, it was engineered in a lab. All right, let's turn the heat up. Corn was just the appetizer. Now we step into the Cold War rabbit hole, where fart science got very real. Picture this. It's the 1950s. The US government is terrified of nuclear war. Everyone's building bunkers, duck and cover drills are in schools, and scientists are working overtime to figure out how long people could actually survive underground if the bombs dropped. And here's the bizarre part. They quickly ran into a problem. Not radiation, not food shortages, not even water. The problem was farts. See, if you pack dozens of people into an airtight bunker for months, methane and hydrogen buildup becomes a very real threat. Too much gas in the air, and suddenly your fallout shelter becomes a ticking time bomb. So, what did the government do? They started funding research into digestion, gut bacteria, and human gas production. Declassified documents from the 1960s mention experiments on soldiers where their diets were carefully controlled, and their, let's just say, output was measured with military precision. Yes, there were literal fart logs in Cold War archives. Because for the Pentagon, farts weren't a joke. They were a national security issue. And here's where the dots connect. Around the same time, American agriculture was shifting to mass corn production, and processed food companies were experimenting with new artificial additives, preservatives, and sweeteners. The government was obsessed with calories, efficiency, and shelf life, not gut health. So you had military scientists studying how food affects gas, while corporations, backed by corn subsidies, were pumping out products that guaranteed more of it. Coincidence? Maybe. But the timing lines up almost too perfectly. Now, some conspiracy theorists go even further. They claim America's ultra-processed diet wasn't just an accident of capitalism, it was a strategic move, a way to fatten up, sedate, and destabilize a population through food. Gas wasn't just a byproduct, it was part of the control mechanism. Sounds crazy, right? But ask yourself, why did gut microbiome research, a field that could have revolutionized health decades ago, get buried until the 2000s? Why did no one care that Americans were gassier, sicker, and more bloated than the rest of the world? Unless it served a bigger purpose? Maybe farting wasn't just embarrassing. Maybe it was engineered. Because the deeper you dig, the stranger it gets. It turns out, America's gas problem isn't just about corn or Cold War labs. It's about the very microbes living inside you. And those microbes, they may not even be yours. So, now we dive into the gut itself, where the conspiracy gets personal. Here's something wild. Technically, you're not even fully human. Right now, your body is home to about 100 trillion microbes, bacteria, fungi, and other tiny organisms. They outnumber your human cells. And together, they're called your gut microbiome. This microbiome does everything. It digests food, produces vitamins, regulates mood, and yes, controls how much gas you release. Different microbes produce different gases. Some pump out methane, others hydrogen, some even sulfur. The stuff that makes farts smell like rotten eggs. Now here's the problem. The average American microbiome is completely wrecked compared to other countries. And it didn't happen by accident. Why? Antibiotics and fast food. Starting in the 1950s, antibiotics were hailed as miracle drugs. They saved lives, but they also wiped out good gut bacteria along with the bad. Doctors in the US handed them out like candy, while farmers used them to fatten livestock cheaply. By the 1980s, America wasn't just an antibiotic nation. It was an antibiotic empire. And when your microbiome gets nuked, it comes back weaker, dominated by gas-producing bacteria, which explains why Americans fart more than populations with intact microbiomes. Then layer on top the fast food revolution. Think McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell. Highly processed, low-fiber, high-sugar meals. Basically, junk food designed to feed the gas-producing microbes while starving the healthier ones. Over decades, the US population bred a microbiome that was literally optimized for farts. Compare this with, say, rural African tribes who eat high-fiber diets. Studies show they have completely different microbial profiles, stronger guts, less gas, fewer chronic diseases. Same with Mediterranean populations. Their gut ecosystems aren't collapsing. America's is. And here's where it gets creepy. In 2017, scientists at Stanford found that certain gut bacteria linked to high gas production barely exist in some cultures, but dominate in Americans. Which raises the question, did corporations know this all along? Did they design foods to target and feed these microbes? Because when you control someone's gut, you control more than their farts. You control their mood, cravings, even decision-making. Your microbiome literally influences your brain through the gut-brain axis. So maybe it's not just about why Americans fart so much. Maybe it's about who benefits when they do. Because once you follow the money trail, it stops being funny. Gas isn't just a digestive issue. It's a billion-dollar business. And the companies cashing in? They don't want you to stop farting. Now we pull the curtain back on the money machine behind America's gas. Let's be real. If farting is a national epidemic, someone out there is making money off it. And surprise, it's not just Taco Bell. Here's the dirty secret. America's gas problem is profitable. Start with Big Food. The companies making ultra-processed snacks, sugary sodas, and corn-based everything, they know exactly what they're doing. Food scientists literally test how different ingredients ferment in the gut. They've got labs measuring gas production, bloating, and cravings. And they've engineered foods that not only keep you coming back for more, but also keep your gut bacteria belching like a broken exhaust pipe. But that's only half the story. Because when you're gassy, bloated, and uncomfortable, guess who swoops in? Big Pharma. Think about the aisles at CVS or Walgreens. Gas-X, Pepto-Bismol, Beano, probiotics, digestive enzymes. Americans spend billions every year on products to manage digestive chaos. It's like a loop. The food companies sell you gas, and the pharma companies sell you relief. A perfect cycle of profit. And it doesn't stop there. Ever notice how gut health trends, like kombucha, probiotics, detox teas, explode in America faster than anywhere else? That's because marketers know the problem is real. Americans are desperate to fix their digestion, so wellness brands push quick fixes. Spoiler, most don't actually work. It's like a sick comedy. Imagine Ford selling cars that constantly break down, then opening repair shops on every corner. That's the American gut economy. And here's the kicker. There are even whispers that insurance companies benefit from this too. Chronic digestive issues like IBS, acid reflux, and gut inflammation are exploding in the US. Healthcare costs skyrocket, and entire industries of specialists profit from a nation that can't digest properly. So the question isn't just why Americans fart so much, it's why would anyone want to stop it? When every fart represents a dollar sign in a billion-dollar industry, the incentives are crystal clear. Keep people gassy, keep them bloated, keep them buying. Because in America, even your farts have been turned into a business model. But if you think this ends with food and medicine, think again. Because some researchers suggest America's gas isn't just an economic issue. It might be a weapon, a biological tool, and the evidence is hiding in plain sight. This is where the story gets darker, stranger, and a little explosive, literally. Okay, this might sound insane at first, but stick with me. Because the idea of weaponized flatulence isn't just a joke, it's something the US military actually studied. During World War II, the OSS, which later became the CIA, developed something called the Who-Me stink bomb. It was designed to humiliate enemy officers by spraying them with a sulfur compound that smelled exactly like a fart. The idea was psychological warfare. Undermine authority by making leaders literally stink. Soldiers tested it, scientists refined it, and yes, it worked a little too well. Reports say it backfired when American troops couldn't stand the smell either. But that was just the start. Fast forward to the Cold War. The Pentagon was obsessed with biological warfare, testing everything from anthrax to LSD. And buried in those programs were experiments on human digestion, methane emissions, and crowd control gases. Some declassified notes even mention the potential of using digestive byproducts as non-lethal incapacitating agents. In plain English, farts as weapons. Sounds funny, until you realize methane is highly flammable. In enclosed spaces, it's dangerous. Remember those nuclear bunkers we talked about earlier? Too much methane and hydrogen buildup from human bodies could turn a survival shelter into a bomb. So yes, the US military cared very deeply about farts. Now here's where it gets even creepier. Some conspiracy theorists claim the shift to a heavily corn and processed food diet wasn't just about profit. It was about normalizing high gas output in the population, so military experiments could gather more data. Basically, turn America into one giant farting laboratory. Even NASA got involved. Astronauts on the Apollo missions had to wear suits and capsules where gas buildup could literally kill them. NASA funded studies on flatulence in confined environments, warning about methane levels in space cabins. In other words, your digestion wasn't just personal. It was a matter of national security. So ask yourself, was the gassiness of Americans an accident? Or was it a side effect of decades of experiments, subsidies, and secret projects where the military, corporations, and government all had skin in the game? Because when you start connecting the dots, America's gas problem starts looking less like biology and more like policy. And here's the wildest twist yet. Because if you look around the world, other countries don't have this problem at the same scale. Which raises a chilling question. Why is America so uniquely gassy? And could it be part of something much bigger? So, we zoom out to the global stage and ask, why America and not the rest of the world? Here's the strangest part of all this. Americans aren't just a little gassier than the rest of the world. They're dramatically gassier. Take Japan, for example. Their traditional diet is based on rice, fish, seaweed, and fermented foods like miso and natto. Studies show their gut microbiomes are rich in bacteria that break down fiber cleanly, producing less methane and hydrogen. Translation? Less fart fuel. Or look at Mediterranean countries, Italy, Greece, Spain. Lots of olive oil, vegetables, legumes, and fresh seafood. Their diets create stable gut bacteria that don't produce nearly as much gas. Sure, beans can be gassy, but when you pair them with balanced fiber and healthy oils, digestion smooths out. Even India, where vegetarian diets are common, sees less chronic bloating and flatulence than the US. And that's despite eating lentils and chickpeas daily, the very foods Americans blame for gas. Why? Because Indian cooking uses spices like cumin, ginger, and turmeric, which regulate digestion and microbial balance. Now contrast all of that with America. Processed food, low fiber, corn syrup in everything, antibiotics in the meat, artificial sweeteners like sorbitol and xylitol, infamous for giving people diarrhea and gas. It's like the food system was engineered to maximize digestive chaos. And here's the kicker. When immigrants move to the US, their microbiomes shift. Studies show that within just a year or two, people from Southeast Asia or Africa who relocate to America lose much of their original gut diversity and start experiencing the same digestive issues as Americans. In other words, it's not genetics, it's environment. So why is this important? Because it means America's gas epidemic isn't inevitable. It was manufactured. Other countries eat, digest, and live without constant bloating. America doesn't. Which raises a bigger question. Was this just capitalism run amok, or was there a more coordinated agenda? Think about it. A population that's constantly uncomfortable, distracted, and reliant on medications and wellness products is a population that's easier to control. Bread and circuses? More like burgers and Beano. And if this sounds like a stretch, just remember, governments throughout history have controlled populations through food. Ancient Rome used grain subsidies to keep the poor fed but docile. The Soviets rationed bread. And in America? Maybe the tool of control wasn't scarcity, but gas. Because when you take everything we've uncovered, corn conspiracies, Cold War labs, microbiome manipulation, profit loops, and global comparisons, it all points to one unsettling conclusion. America's gas problem might not just be an accident. It might be the plan. Now let's land this plane with the final, unsettling big picture. So after all this, corn subsidies, Cold War bunkers, gut bacteria wars, billion-dollar gas pills, and global comparisons, what does it all add up to? Here's the uncomfortable truth. America's fart problem might be less about biology and more about control. Think about it. The US food system was deliberately reshaped in the 1970s with corn subsidies, processed foods, and factory farming. At the same time, antibiotic overuse and military gut research weakened the microbiome of an entire nation. Corporations profited from the chaos, while pharmaceuticals cashed in on the side effects. And unlike other nations, where traditional diets still protect digestive health, Americans got locked into a feedback loop of cheap food, bad gut health, endless farting, endless spending. And that loop isn't just about money. It's about distraction. When you're constantly bloated, tired and uncomfortable, you're less likely to question the system that made you that way. You reach for another soda, another antacid, another drive-through meal, because that's what's easy. That's what's normalized. And here's the kicker. Your gut isn't just about digestion. It's about your mind. Modern neuroscience shows the gut-brain axis connects your microbiome to your mood, your focus, even your decision-making. If America's gut is hijacked by gas-producing microbes, then maybe so is America's brain. A nation that farts more might also think less clearly, crave more junk, and demand fewer answers. So ask yourself, what if America's greatest weapon of mass distraction isn't TikTok, isn't Hollywood, isn't even fast food itself, but the invisible army of microbes inside every stomach, pumping out gas 24/7? What if the biggest conspiracy of all is that the system doesn't want to fix it, because the system runs on it? And that leads us to today. Look around. Gut issues are at record highs. IBS, reflux, bloating, and food intolerances have exploded. Gas memes flood TikTok. Fast food giants are more powerful than ever. And the solutions we're sold, keto, detox teas, probiotics, just feed back into the same economy. Maybe farting is funny. Maybe it's embarrassing. But in America, it's also political. It's economic. It's systemic. And the more you look at it, the more it feels like the Great American Fart isn't just a punchline. It's a policy. So next time you laugh at a fart joke, remember, it might not just be your gut betraying you. It might be history, agriculture, corporations, the Cold War, a whole empire of gas designed to keep you, well, distracted, bloated, and profitable. Because in the end, America doesn't just export culture, fast food, or democracy. It exports farts. And maybe that was the plan all along.